Good morning again. I've not been here for quite a while, and it's good to see a lot of familiar faces. You've got me here because, well, things are changing. And change is not always a bad thing. I sincerely hope and pray for all of you that this change goes smoothly and well. Now, and as to why I'm here today, some of you were here when I was still a kid running through this church. A lot of you saw me through, many of the better years of my life, and some of you were here for a number of the years I'm a lot less proud of. Through the grace of God, I'm here today and actually fairly happy. A lot of that grace was delivered to me through Pastor Lauren. And as she left, I don't know what all she was. I know she was busy and scrambling, and one of the things she did was asked if I would be willing to fill in on one of these Sundays. And, when she asked, I said yes. And I didn't say yes out of a sense of obligation to her. I am very, very grateful for everything she has done for me. And, in all honesty, there is no way I can repay her for what she has done. But I don't think that's why she did anything that she had done. She was doing what needed to be done, and that was it. And yet still, I am grateful. And what it comes down to is, that is one of the people I want to be more like. And when she asked, this was something that needed to be done. And today, you're stuck with me doing it. I was going to say, just recently, I think it might have been Friday or yesterday, a friend of mine did say, I don't sit idly by and wait for God to tell me what to do. I do what's in front of me, and the results are up to God. Like I said, Lauren did something that needed to be done. The results are in God's hands. And I do hope, at least as far as me as her project, I hope she finds some joy in those results. Once I had said yes, Lauren sent me information. There are books. Methodists have a book. The Lutherans have a book. I'm guessing the Catholics have one too. But they set out a plan for the church year, and they do this literally like years in advance. If you've got access to it, you can look up what's going to happen, this time next year. I kind of like to believe that they've got an overall plan and bigger ideas and all sorts of things I don't know about, and the reality of it is very likely someone just got tired of hearing the same sermon every third Sunday of the month because it was the third Sunday, and that's what we talk about on that Sunday. But in this book, it gives me a theme for the day. Today's theme is listening for and feeling God's presence. And with that, there were readings for today. I read all of them. When I put the notes in for the bulletin, I put all of them in there because, well, one, they were in the book, and two, the more reading Diane has to do, the less talking I have to do later. And I was all on board with that. So I got here this morning and I found out that here we only do 2 readings. Okay. Fortunately, they picked the 2 that I liked best. Okay. Last time I was here, I told you I was into games. I like rule sets. I like systems. And probably in the past 20 years, I like it when everyone is working together. There are a lot of new games out there where you get to cooperate. But even if it's something as simple as a game of cards where it's everyone against everyone else and winner take all, every game, every player, you're still stuck with one set of rules. And I will admit, over the years, I have spent countless hours with numerous games and numerous systems trying to find the most efficient way to weasel my way through that rule system to my advantage. And I guess, that's not a tangent we're going to be going into today. Where I'm going with this is kind of where I ended last time. We're all playing a game we call life. Not the little board game that was there when I was a kid and, to the best of my knowledge, is still around today. We're playing an actual life. We're called to live one. And in all honesty, the win conditions aren't very clearly defined. And as Christians, we're playing by one set of rules. You don't have to look too far to find a whole bunch of people out there playing by different rule sets, which complicates things. Our rule set comes from one really large book. Pretty sure you're all familiar with it. Hopefully you've all read it at least once. If not, we have people like Diane who will read you bits and pieces of it on the occasional basis. Once again, I like to think that overall plan involves getting more of the pieces spread out there over time. All of us Christians start out with one very basic rule. Kind of sounds like we're sinners. We tend to break the rules. Makes the rest of the rule set really complicated. Probably makes it even more confusing when viewed from the outside. You add into that, to be honest, most of us actually haven't read the rule book. A lot of us claim to be playing by this rule book, and if you sit and watch us, no, we aren't. I spent years playing by different rules. Like I said, it gets confusing really fast. And now, you have a person standing here in front of you saying he likes rule books and is trying to get you to read another one. Unfortunately, life goes on. And it's a long book. And life will continue going on while you read. And one of the things you probably already know, and the book will tell you, this game comes with a timer. And regardless of what you read and how much you read, whether you read little bits and pieces or you know it backwards and forwards, and among the people who play games, there is a term, generally not used in a nice way, for someone who knows the rules and uses them, and that term is rules lawyer. And I have to admit it's been used about me more than once. But what it comes down to is it doesn't matter how well you know the rules. It's what you do with them. Sooner or later, you have to get out and live that life. And all of those rules are about what you do in this life. And one of the simplest instructions in there, which gets complicated really fast, was follow me. Which more or less means spend time with me. Listen to me. And finally, we're back to our theme. Listening for the voice and the presence of God. Okay, as to the readings, Jeremiah is pretty simple. He doesn't really have to look real far to find the voice of God. God's actually talking to him in this passage. Jeremiah is reluctant because he's young. He doesn't feel qualified. Probably a lot of the people he's talking to are going to be older and he believes wiser. And still, God sends him out with a message. If you read past what Diane read, it starts out well. The people do well. Things go well. And people start thinking, okay, things are going pretty good. We don't need God so much. And Jeremiah stays faithful to God. He listens. He spends a good chunk of the book saying, hey, you guys need to turn back from this. Go back to, where we started. And, well, if you keep reading, and even if you don't keep reading, just head to the table of contents. Look at Jeremiah. Next book is called Lamentations. Gives you a hint that things might be going south here. Now, one of the readings you didn't get, because we only do 2 here, was Psalms, and it was a psalm. And the next one is the gospel. And Jesus heals a woman. The Pharisees are upset because he's breaking the rules. The rule I think they're looking towards is one of the big ones. I think it's number 3. It's more or less, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. That was one that had been around for a long time. And somewhere along the way, they came up with a very, very short list of things that were considered worth remembering and holy. And then Jesus came along and started doing things that still needed doing on the Sabbath. And in this one, he pointed out that remembering the Sabbath, keeping it holy, doesn't mean don't do what needs doing. This isn't a command to idleness. There are still people out there that need help. The final passage, which you also didn't get to hear, but I've got stuff written on, is from Hebrews. And overall, I'm pretty okay with that one being taken out. The passage in Hebrews is kind of troubling to me, not really in what it says. It's not that I don't agree with it. It's one of those I don't understand. The writer is someone who's a lot more educated than most of the writers in the New Testament. And he spends a lot of time referencing things that I think if you lived 2,000 years ago might have a lot more meaning, but he frequently loses me. But, and you won't have got this part, but it ends with some fire and an earth shaking. And I still don't know what he was referencing, but what it brought me back to was Kings and Elijah. And once again, the people didn't listen. Elijah was alone. He was running. He was hiding. And it says, I honestly don't remember what he said, but he asked God a question. And what it says is, there was a fire, the earth shook, and God wasn't there. And then there was a still, small voice. And that voice said, it said go somewhere. I don't remember where he was supposed to go. Diane was saying she doesn't like going through all those names in the Bible. This was probably one of those names I can't pronounce and therefore don't remember. But the voice said, go to this place. There are still people who listen. And that's where he went. But really, what I got out of that was the still small voice, which is what I used as the title for this because, at least according to the bulletin, I'm supposed to make one of those too. But that, while I don't always agree and frequently don't understand with all of the references and, people referring to things that, happened, 600-700 pages ago that I don't necessarily remember today, it's one of the wonderful things in the Bible. If you read it just once, beginning to end, it's pretty long, and to be honest, in a lot of parts, pretty boring book. There's lots of names, a lot of them I can't pronounce, lots of rules, half of which no longer apply by the time you hit the end of the book. Actually, you get about 2/3 of the way through, you've got one person He just flat out says, hey, what is the most important commandment? It's like, well, we can just skip right to that page. It is hard to hear God today. Especially if you live here. We have, we have everything we need. We have food to eat. We have a place to sleep. We have a job to do. We have a nice, bright, shiny box that's willing to tell us what we should be doing, what we should be eating, what we can do to make our lives better, what the best car to buy is, where we can get the next iPhone. There's all sorts of voices out there more than willing to tell you what you should do with your time, your money, and anything else they can probably get from you. And right now, at least in this country, we're at a point to where obesity is now a problem. We currently have more jobs than we have people to fill them. And yet, it seems like one of the biggest concerns that we have right now is we don't want to open the borders to let people in because they might eat some of that food. They might actually take some of those jobs. We have more than we need and still aren't willing to share. Recently, a friend of mine described her decision-making process as one of a committee. She went through, or goes through, the process I just described hundreds of times a day. She asks, what should I be doing? And, there are many people willing to tell you what you should be doing. She's been through probably every diet in the book. She's probably currently looking for her next one. And, all of her decisions are influenced by, what would other people think if I do this? What would happen if I did that? What if this goes wrong? She's got so many voices just clamoring for her attention. And kind of have to admit that a lot of what I do, I hear some of the same voices, not always the same message. But as Christians, it's really simple. All of that stuff we shouldn't have to worry about. We've only got one voice we need to listen to. Okay, this is a story. It actually came to me through a Christian source. And God is never mentioned in it. And the beauty of it is you don't have to look very hard to find him. It was told by a young man living in this century. He graduated somewhere, I want to say probably about a decade ago. I don't know exactly. He was graduating with an advanced degree in physics. He was graduating with one of those degrees that are advanced enough that they don't just make you walk across the stage and get a diploma. They actually let you stand up and say something. And he spoke of a young man. I think it was in Germany. I am not sure. Somewhere in Europe. The man was a laborer. He was on his way home from work. And somewhere between work and home, there was some kind of fair thing. Probably something similar to what some of you will be doing tomorrow night. I mean, there was, people selling food, drink, and stuff. They set up their tables, they're there for a few days, and then they move on to the next town. The one pitch that stood out to him was someone selling books. And that person wasn't selling the books to him. They were saying, buy a book for a child. Child needs to read. Okay, I'm also a reader. Anyone who has watched me grow up knows that. So, already, this story's got me. This man was illiterate. So, her pitch got him, probably in a different way than it would have gotten me, but he also understood the need for reading. So, he also knew a boy with too much free time. So, he bought a book on rocket ships. Once again, this storyteller knows most of my buttons. He took the book to the boy and spent the evening with him, telling stories based on the pictures in the book. The next day, he was confronted by the boy's mom. She was upset. She wasn't home when he did this. See, she was a single mom. That's why the kid had a lot of free time. She still cared. And she worries when some strange guy shows up and starts telling her kid stories for no good reason. Story gets a little vague here, but over a period of time, the illiterate guy married the boy's mom, became the boy's father. The boy got older, went to school. The boy actually learned to read. And as he learned to read, he read the words in the book to his father. And his father learned to read. The book wasn't about rockets. It was a physics text. And, the boy was graduating in physics. But what it comes down to is, from a simple message, if a child needs to read, a man found a wife, gained a son, learn to read. And once they were both reading, before the boy went off to college, the two of them together went through and did all of the work in that book. All from one small voice. Okay. Physics is one of the more sciencey sciences. And it, as such, there is a lot. I mean, I know multiple different physicists, and they weigh in on both sides. There are some very, very Christian physicists out there, and there are some who say that science denies God. Through the story, we don't know where this boy fits in that spectrum. We don't know if he was ever a successful physicist. But what I do know is it's easiest to hear God when you're out there, you're on the edge, you're alone, and you need something. Whether that is because you've lost everything, or whether you are way out there in front, leading the edge in physics. Either way, you're out there, and God's with you. Amen.